First, I want to say one time I was at a conference, a guy from out of state, he came and they did the pre-standing ovation. He said that was the only time he ever got a standing ovation, so he really appreciated Iowa. Love that you guys do that. So, my name is Eric Broche with Florakeep. Some of you know me. I've been around for a little bit, and like Jay had said, I presented over summer as part of the Hawkeye Startup Accelerator, where the university gets a bunch of students to basically, their summer internship is to get paid to work on their own startups. And Florakeep was one of mine, so I'll be able to talk about that a little bit more today. Florakeep is a new flower preservative that I invented that keeps roses and whatnot fresh for a few days longer than traditional flower preservatives and flower foods that are currently on the market today. A little bit about me. I recently just graduated here from the University of Iowa with a major in biochemistry, a minor in chemistry, and an entrepreneurial management certificate. I was working in a research lab where we were developing a new fertilizer additive that would make crops grow faster, bigger, things like that. And what was odd about that research group was they were all chemists who were trying to make this fertilizer. I was brought in as like a biochem major to actually know anything whatsoever about plants, and with the entrepreneurial management certificate, knowing anything about business whatsoever as well. They had me doing some market research into greenhouses, and I found out that all the biggest greenhouses in the US actually grow flowers instead of growing food. So at the time we were waiting for the year-long process of getting the grants to come through, and through that research I kind of stumbled into flowers. And so I asked the principal investigator, PI, like my boss, if I could try out the chemical on some flowers and enter one of these student business model competitions, get my own funding, and do this project without having to wait for the federal fertilizer grant to come through. He said go for it, and one day I bought some flowers, tried it out, and it kept the flowers fresh for a little while longer, and I've been running with the project ever since. So, just like a little background, flowers wilt. That's a market problem. Through my customer discovery, I've talked to about 45 different florists and just conversations with people who buy flowers. And it's pretty standard for florist locations that 10 to 15% of their inventory is lost from wilting. And that's a pretty big number, especially when you consider that florists and the flower industry have pretty thin margins. And that's in no small part due to the fact that they have such high wilting loss. This is significantly due to the fact that 80% of the flowers sold in the United States are actually imported from South America. They're actually flown on refrigerated containers because the time frame and the preservation is so important that they spend that much energy and capital to keep them fresh. And it's not uncommon that when you buy some flowers, say at the florist or at Walmart or whatever, that they're already 2 weeks old. And given that average post-harvest lifetime of flowers about 3 weeks, that's why I'm sure we've all gotten flowers just to watch them wilt a few days later. Like I said, through the fertilizer stumble onto this new preservative. That 10 to 15% wilting loss is despite a full line of flower preservative products that are currently on the market. Floralife is the name brand. Pretty much every florist I've talked to uses Floralife. It's pretty much the brand for flower preservatives. There are what's called 5 steps of fresh at different points in the flower supply chain that different formulations of flower preservatives are used, and that still results in that amount of wilting loss. So I was able to stumble onto that solution. All right, here's just an example picture of, so Florakeep is what I named mine as kind of a spin-off. Here is comparison of flowers after 9 days. You can see both were given Floralife, and then the one on the right there was also given my additive. And this is a pretty dramatic photo, you know. Typically, I've been able to get around 2 to 4 extra days of ace life, but it's a very subjective process. There's no official definition for when flowers wilt. I've asked all the florists about it, and they just say, oh, I just eyeball it. But the way the biochemistry of it all works is that it increases vase life through boosting a flower's stress tolerance, and I'll talk more about that in a little minute, in a minute. But the main three things are that it extends vase life, it reduces waste through that stress tolerance boosting. So going back to market information, there's about 32,000 florists in the United States alone, and if you include department stores like Costco, Walmart, Hy-Vee Flowers, that brings it to 100,000. And in total amount of flowers sold is about $4.2 billion worth of flowers. That's a lot, and that's just the United States. And yeah, industry growth overall is growing about 4.5% a year. Fun fact, florists as an industry, brick and mortar florist locations are declining a little bit, but online flower sales are going up pretty dramatically, so that the overall flower industry is growing to about that rate. Because individual florist locations are losing sales to those online mega giants, but those online stores use these individual florists as distribution hubs. So even if their own sales are technically declining, they're still seeing more business. It's an odd situation. But so yeah, $4.2 billion worth of flowers sold with a 10 to 15% wilting loss. If, from conversations I've had with florists, that extra 2 to 4 days, it depends on location, it depends on flower type, but that can potentially cut an individual florist's loss rate in about half. That works out to roughly $250 million in savings by cutting wilting loss in half. And again, these are just rough numbers. But it just goes to illustrate how big of an economic problem wilting flowers are. And when you consider the flying up from South America and they're always kept cold, it's a pretty big environmental problem as well. So, like I said, I was able to come up with this new flower preservative, and the idea is that it's an additive to the barrage of flower preservatives they already have. And so I'm packaging this new thing and selling it to florists, the florists and their distributors. It seems like it'll be easier for me to sell to florists than the distributors, because they don't want to admit that they have that much wilting loss, and they try to get flowers in and out of the door as soon as possible, and the point where they're really sitting on the shelves and having that wilting loss is at the florist locations. Same thing with retail locations. Places like Hy-Vee and Walmart typically have more wiltage loss than a small brick and mortar flower store, because they're just always on the shelves and florists have a better idea of what to order on a weekly basis, versus like Walmart that just has standard set that pretty much always gets thrown out. And you know, if I could license this to the name brand, that's probably like, you know, the best long-term option for me. Fun fact, there's 2 different styles to run a florist location. Everyday deliveries, where you're basically a distribution hub for online sales, like I had mentioned before, and weekly deliveries, where you have some inventory on the shelves and just keep that going. The daily delivery places have really high turnover and closer to 2 to 5% wilting loss because of that, but the weekly delivery ones, which are more common, have that much higher rate of loss. Yeah. So my apologies for the formatting on that. I'm pricing a 2 kilogram bottle at about $20 per bottle, which is right on par with other flower preservatives. And my cost of goods sold is about $6 a bottle. That includes the packaging and the chemical itself, which is actually a pretty cheap chemical, thank God, which works out to a margin of about 70%. And you know, for financial projections, I'm always a little bit more conservative on this. I'm kind of estimating at year 5, rough maturity, revenues of about $1.2 million annually. And again, that's pretty conservative based off me trying to sell to individual florists as opposed to a licensing contract or a sale to the name brand. Next steps for me is to get a proper supplier. I've been ordering in small batches for my experiments and like lower scale customer trials. I've looked into suppliers for the chemical from China, different chemical manufacturers, but every time you get a new supplier for a chemical, you have to fully test it again and again because you don't know what the heck is in it. And me being an individual startup, I don't have the chemistry instruments to really tell what's in it without trying it out with some flowers. As well as packaging. So with any startup and any invention, you're going to go through iterations. It started as like an additive. You know that little packet of flower food you get when you get a bouquet of flowers as an additive for that solid mixture? And then I turned it into a spray, and then realized it's better to go back to the powder. But when it was a spray, I was able to get a few bottles and this label. You guys can come up and check this out. The Founders Club marketing agency was able to actually make this label for me for free and design it and everything. It's really neat. It's kind of got that watercolor. Or you got that? Yeah. So yeah, next steps are to get the supplier. I already am in conversations with a few, but it's just a matter of making the right decision and not blowing a bunch of limited capital on the wrong one. Settling on packaging. This may sound silly, but I don't know which size to go with. If it's better to give a florist 3 months worth at a time or 1 month at a time. It's just a matter of getting their preference through. And then just marketing, I need to work on the website a little bit. It's worth noting, I didn't mention this before. Because I was in a university research lab when the invention was made, it was technically university intellectual property, which meant that if I would have gotten a patent on it, they would have taken 75% of revenues from the product, which is ridiculous, especially for a startup. So, knowing that all the name brand flower preservatives are trade secrets, I decided to go with a trade secret instead. I still had to license it as a trade secret from the university, and that legal process has been a whole thing. I've been able to hire a great lawyer that helps me out, and there's still some hoops to jump through with that, but it's almost finalized and should be done by the end of the month. I was hoping to have it done for this Valentine's Day, but that happens. I'm sure if any of you have gotten flowers, they're already wilting a little bit. And I was able to get some discount flowers because of that. That's nice. But yeah, my next steps are really to finalize that legal stuff, nail down the supplies and packaging, and just start going for it. Here's my contact info. Again, my name is Eric Broche. I have some business cards up here, and I'll be around. And yeah, are there any questions?
What was the reason you went from the spray back to the powder?
It's one of those, some florists told me it would be easier just in the process because there already are a lot of preservatives. It's easier to scoop and then scoop all in one process as opposed to do a bunch of scoops and then go again with the spray. Yeah.
What stage is it most effective? Right after you cut it, right before you put it in, you recut it? How effective is it without the Flora Life? 15 other questions.
Theoretically, it's pretty dang effective at any point in the chain, but given that most of them are grown and cut in South America, I can't really test it at that level. I've really been kind of limited to buying them at the store as a consumer and trying it out there, which seems to be pretty effective. But that's one of the reasons I want to be able to be in conversations with a retailer such as Hy-Vee or with Flora Life, the name brand. And sorry, what was the second?
How effective is it without Flora Life? In other words, could this replace Flora Life?
Oh yeah, I think I have some that here. So forgive me for my dad. I prepared this presentation on a little bit of short notice, so it's not as clean as I would have liked. This column is just water after about a week, and this is just Florakeep without the Flora Life. And you can see they're drooping, they're leaning, versus with Florakeep, they're staying pretty fresh. And then this is after about a week and a half, if I remember correct. Water, Flora Life, and Flora Life plus Florakeep. Again, not the best pictures. I'm working on that. Ricardo is probably going to help me out and take some high quality pictures. I'm using my cell phone right now. But one of the reasons that it works, and I forgot to mention this earlier, is I like to say that there's a dozen ways to wilt, and the name brand stops about 7 of them. Florakeep adds another 1 or 2. Traditional flower preservatives contain sugar, an acidifier, because the base water is supposed to be more acidic, and an antibacterial. And then the name brand, the good one, also contains an ethylene inhibitor. I don't know if you guys are familiar with ethylene. You know the phrase, one bad apple ruins a bunch? One piece of fruit starts to rot and the gases make the other ones go bad? That's the hormone ethylene, and that's a huge problem in the flower industry as well. So Floralife name brand has an ethylene inhibitor which blocks that, but that only blocks damage. Florakeep is able to actually repair some internal damage. Again, me being a biochemistry major, I knew some of the internal wilting mechanisms, or for lack of a better term, and was able to use that fertilizer's process to help repair some of that damage. So that's the reason it works better in addition as opposed to just by itself. But it does help just by itself. Good question.
So you presented this summer. Can you talk about the progress that you've made since then, or what you've learned throughout the way? If it's anything different.
One of the big things was, I'm just going to go back here. One of the big things was that the whole legal side of everything, it was a long, 5-6 months long process to get that legal side through the university done. So the main accomplishment has been that. I don't think I had these packaging and this label done during summer. And I did have to spend some time being a student, you know, I didn't just graduate. But main things has been back-end legal side of things. I think you had a question, sir?
I was just wondering if you're partnering with any local florists or something, or how you're actually really doing your research, having 7 to 9 days or whatever you're adding to it.
So a number of florists, pretty much everyone I've talked to, has been interested in reducing their waste by trying something out. Willow and Stock here in town, I've been partnering with them. They've been actually giving me some of their flowers at reduced cost, which is really nice. And Hy-Vee has actually shown a fair amount of interest. So, you know, Hy-Vee has a floral department. They actually own a subsidiary called Floral Distributing Inc. that handles all the wholesaling and deliveries for all Hy-Vee floral departments. And we know that Hy-Vee corporate is always open to trying out new products. So they said it'd be as simple as I show them my data, which I already kind of have, and once I get the legal side stuff done, they'll take a few samples of Florakeep, give it to a few of their locations, which I've asked a bunch of managers, like individual store floral managers, and they've all said they'd be willing to test. If those few stores like the product, then the subsidiary will order Florakeep for all 250 Hy-Vee floral departments. So that's one of my early market penetration strategies. 1-800-Flowers here in town is also pretty interested. Those are franchise locations as opposed to all corporate owned. But again, an entry into a big player in the market. And I don't have any connection with Floralife at this time, but hopefully getting some traction with Hy-Vee 1-800-Flowers will make that happen.
So what is the target date to sell the whole thing to Floralife?
I don't have anything specific in mind. I would like to have that done within 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
I'm hoping to have this legal hoops done by the end of this month, be able to have one large client such as Hy-Vee or at least one 1-800-Flowers location by the end of March, so that for Mother's Day, the second highest flower selling day of the year has Florakeep on the shelves and used by them to get some more data, some customer recommendations. Fun fact, more money is spent, more flowers are sold on Valentine's Day, but more money is spent on Mother's Day for flowers. Because, you know, for Valentine's Day you can get chocolates and everything else, but everyone just sends their mom flowers. You know. So
they have to be nice flowers, right?
Exactly, and you spend a lot of money, it's your
Can't
mom.
be flowers and chocolates. It has
Yeah.
to be nice, pretty flowers.
Yeah, come on. So, and pretty much those 2 days, I mean, there's always a little bit of normal flower ordering throughout the year, but those 2 days are really the meat of the year for these florists. So they have to make it work, and they order huge quantities just to have things on stock, and they have 10 to 15% wilting loss. So Florakeep can cut that down and help these margins.
Is this only cut flowers? Can it be flowers that are still in the ground in planters? Does it do anything to them? Are there opportunities for edible food, other things fresh?
Great question. It's more, the chemicals of it is more applicable to post-harvest storage
Okay.
as it is fertilizer. That was kind of the spin-off that I had from the lab's fertilizer. And please remind me of the second question. Food?
Any way that it's edible.
Yeah, it's actually very safe. If I wanted to eat it, I could. I have to say that I don't recommend that. But to put this in perspective, one day the vitamin shop in the Old Cat Mall, my roommate had asked me to pick up something for him, and then I saw it on the shelf there. And so, like I said, you could eat it if you want. Very safe. It's not technically organic because of the way the manufacturing process is. It theoretically could be used for food, in the grocery stores when they spray water on the fruits and veggies. It could be in there. But there are so many regulations with food, fruits, and vegetables. There's practically nothing with flowers, which was a big motivator for going with flowers instead of all this fertilizer stuff. Yes?
You were talking about the proof data. Dream for me, if you would, what type of facility would you need to be able to test out and get good data for the built-in process and what your product does? I mean, do you need a greenhouse to grow your flowers? What you said you don't have the equipment to do the testing of the product. Dream for what a labs look like for you.
Ideally, a large walk-in cooler space would be great. Every florist typically has 1 to 3 large walk-in coolers to store the flowers in. Going back to the beginning, they have all these preservatives, and something called the cold chain is actually very important, going back to those refrigerated shipping containers. I have been doing this in just basically an office that the university, JPAC, was kind enough to give me as a student entrepreneur. It was basically just a room in a building that I've been going with so far.
What do you want? What would you dream of your lab being outside of the walk-in cooler? You said you need equipment to test chemicals for your...
Oh, that's stuff like a mass spectrometer, gas chromatography. Those range in like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Nothing that, at least, a dream scenario, I would have a lot of stuff, maybe go over to the research park, get an office there, and you'd be able to use their equipment and instruments. But it's much more applicable and simple to just test it out with florists that are willing to try. And then Floralife name brand, they have all that equipment and stored in research facilities. And so to be able to be in conversation with the department with them.
Is there a Floralife competitor that you can start playing off each other?
So in terms of like name brand, like nationwide brands of flower preservatives, there's Floralife, which was used by 70+% of all florists and flower sales that I've talked to. Something called Chrysol, which is more for those little packets than it is for business use. Floralife dominates the market. There's just no way around that. Yeah. Not that there's much market industry reports on flower preservatives. I've kind of had to throw my own stuff together.
How big is the floor market? How big is their market?
Floralife?
Yeah.
They're the brand worldwide. I don't know the numbers.
What their profits are, what their margins are.
It's a private company. I wasn't able to find that, but I can estimate maybe 400 million a year. Yeah.
Gross or profit.
Profit. Again, worldwide preservatives, the shipping logistics gets ridiculous, and stretching out the base life of flower makes that a lot more comfortable.
How did you project that in 5 years you're going to have 1.2 million?
That comes from what I think I can maintain in terms of growth, going off of suppliers and my own ability to package and distribute. Again, like I said, those are likely very conservative estimates because there's been a lot of interest and hopefully it takes off a lot faster than that and grows a lot faster than that. But just me personally, I like to be more conservative in financial estimates.
So during summer up to now, because I know you said there are some regulations, so have you sold anything or you just tested out?
I'm legally not allowed to sell it quite yet. You can say I've sold the idea to some florists in the sense that they're willing to try it out as soon as I can. But I don't have any revenue as of yet, but that's definitely the goal by the end of next month. Right. And Any other final questions?
I have one more. What about Christmas trees? Didn't we do anything to extend the life of the Christmas tree so that people don't have to paint it green?
Yeah, going back to the food, it should have applications in any type of plant post-harvest storage. It's just that it seems that there's much more of a market opportunity with flowers and much lower regulations and much lower barrier to entry.
Is there a high regulation in the environment for Christmas trees?
For the environment,
No, is there a high regulatory environment for Christmas trees? It's just a joke.
I don't actually know about that. I'll look into that for you. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
Just say if there are no other questions, we can ask our traditional final question. What can we as the community do to help you?
If anybody knows any florists that might be willing to share or try anything out, that would be great. If anybody has any connections to Flora Life, that'd be awesome too. And if anybody works in or has connections with physical product distribution and packaging, that might be helpful as well. Like I said, I'll be around for a while. I got some business cards right here, and my contact info is on the screen. If you're on Jade's screen.